Welcome to our program. My name is Brian Bachofner. I lead product marketing here at Neuron7. And I'm really excited to share some new content with you all today on this new concept and this new product we've launched called Resolution Pathways, which is going to unlock the ability to do guided workflows and guided troubleshooting for service organizations. In a few moments, I'm going to bring on a customer, Sarah Rose, who leads global service at Daktronics, to talk a little bit about their experience as an early adopter with this offering and talk about their overall journey with AI as they look to transform service operations. And then later, I'm going to be joined by Tom Buras, who leads solution engineering here for Neuron7, who's going to walk us through a demo with Sarah's help as well. So really excited to share the time with you today. Thank you all for finding the time, and let's go ahead and dive in. So before we jump in and start talking with Sarah, I think some important context, right? Our worlds as service leaders are not getting any easier, right? We are dealing with increasing amount of product complexity. Every time product or engineering puts out a new smart device, right, we all start pulling our hair out because smart equals complex, right, in our worlds. We continue to deal with a high degree of turnover, natural turnover, as well as the aging workforce, or the silver tsunami, as some would call it. We're losing years of expertise as technicians retire, and we need to be able to replicate that so we're able to minimize the impact of customer experience. And data continues to proliferate and grow, right? When we started 20 years ago, we had no data, we had everything on paper, but now we've got all of these systems. Organizations have greater than 400 average number of data sources across their organization. Makes it very, very difficult to find out what's working at scale to be able to drive resolution accuracy and minimize downtime and improve experience. Add to all of that this new world of AI, right? We have all been bombarded with AI in our personal lives and our professional lives. As service leaders, you need to have a strategy for AI. If you're not proactive about having a strategy about AI, your leaders are going to come to you and they're going to ask you, what's your strategy for AI? So it's not a big surprise. This is from Service Council's 2025 AI research that about 85% of service leaders plan to invest on AI initiatives in 2025, right? I always it's like the 4 out of 5 doctors or dentists. I want to know who the 15% are because they're people that are likely to retire. But I think we're hitting about peak interest relative to interest and momentum around investing in AI and our service delivery mechanisms in 2025, through this year into next year. But then on the right-hand side, right, you see the big but, right? A lot of organizations are dealing with a lot of AI failures, right? About 80% of AI initiatives fail to deliver meaningful ROI. That comes from the RAND Corporation. There's actually new research that's coming out from the likes of Gartner and Forrester that's also talking about some of the challenges relative to, AI goal versus AI reality, right? So we need to kind of, as service leaders, we need to kind of look that in the face, be honest with ourselves and say, hey, what are the things that we need to do organizationally to make sure that when we're on the left-hand side, that we're in the 20% of people who have AI initiatives that deliver meaningful ROI across our service KPIs. Why is that, right? Data, right? I talked about it earlier, 400 data sources. You've got product manuals, you have expert knowledge locked in people's heads, you've got JIRA tickets, you've got your case data, you have a stream of IoT data in some instances, right? Not all the information is up to date. It's not all in one source. It's heterogeneous, it's messy, it's everywhere, right? So it's no surprise that we see that lacking a strong digital data foundation is one of the huge barriers for service leaders. And we're also seeing some new research come out with employees, right? We're starting to talk to our people about their experience with AI in their daily lives. This is across all roles inside of companies, but I think this will play out very similar for service. About 50% of employees say AI is offering inaccurate, confusing, or biased information, right? So we're not giving them what they need to be successful, right? So at Neuron7, we've been focusing for the last 5 years on this kind of concept of domain-specific AI for service organizations that have a lot of complexity. And that's why we're really excited. We released this product at the end of last month, which is this new offering called Resolution Pathways, which is going to help you master resolutions with this concept of guided workflows, the ability to align your knowledge, to streamline your resolution paths and drive service excellence. And it's not a huge surprise that a lot of you are asking for this, right? We actually co-developed this product, and we'll talk to Sarah in a moment, who's an early adopter of this product. But about 67% of service leaders are really looking to invest in AI solutions that can provide that guided workflow, because that's going to help us overcome all those challenges we talked about in the past, right? The data proliferating, the people leaving, right? So, we ultimately want to be able to do that. But again, understanding data is a challenge. Understanding that having a proactive AI roadmap is one that's going to focus on driving real measurable business outcomes is really, really important. So with that, I'm going to introduce Sarah. Sarah, come join us on screen. And I want just before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself to everybody, talk a little bit about your role and a little bit about Daktronics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the whole opportunity to talk a little bit about services, which is such an important thing for many of us who are in this complex environment of trying to serve so many customers with so many different products, right? And a lot of what you described at the beginning of the presentation resonated so deeply with me. So thank you for that. So my name is Sarah Rose, and I work for a company called Daktronics. And what we do is we design, manufacture, and install video and other audiovisual systems. So I think the easiest way to describe it is if you've ever been to a professional sports game and you see replays on the video boards there, that's probably Daktronics. If you've driven along a highway and you see advertising on billboards, that's probably Daktronics. If you're ever filling up with gas and you look at what the gas price is, that's probably Daktronics. So we are all over, and we have so many different products and so many different customers globally. That's a little bit about the company, and I'm responsible for our overall services globally, which includes everything from the point that that product ships out the door to the point that the customer replaces in 10 years. So that's a little bit about me and Daktronics.
Thank you so much. I talked a little bit about the kind of the goal of AI plus the reality, right? You've been on this journey now for some time. So why don't you talk to everybody just about kind of how you focus AI initiatives on like real world transformation, right? Not like dabbling and kind of giving everybody a chatbot, but how do you need to think about AI influencing kind of real world service transformation?
Yes. So a couple of things as we talk about real world is I think many of us are being asked to be able to deliver um, better services with less, right? How do we continue to be able to serve our customers well? But we also feel a pressure from, as you described, this aging workforce. You also described just the need to be able to spin individuals up more quickly and retaining those people that we have. So a couple things that we think about in terms of specifics around the KPIs and why AI was important to us is we want to be able to make sure that our teams are equipped and well positioned to be able to support our customers, particularly through the knowledge that they need to help our customers. Because we know that when they're able to have the right knowledge at the right time, they're better able to support our customers. That does a lot of things. One, it improves employee satisfaction. I feel like I have success. Two, it improves customer satisfaction. And the third element are these KPIs that you're drawing towards. And what specific KPIs are important to us are we want to be able to resolve the issue the first time, during the first conversation, the first on-site visit. We don't want to have to make the customer call back in because we didn't resolve it. And we also don't want to have to make repeated trips. So our goals and what was the hard numbers that really encouraged us to move into this AI and specifically around this pathways was we needed faster onboarding. 70% of our technicians were new to our team. Also, we needed faster case resolution. On average, our cases are 30 to 45 minutes. We have complex systems. And so by saving just even 5 or 10 minutes per case, that amounts to a tremendous savings for us as an organization. And we wanted first time resolution. We also wanted to be able to leverage what we're building in our AI for self-service. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We also wanted our technicians to have faster ability to knowledge and information. We came from a KCS world where we had knowledge base. And while it was helpful, sometimes you know how that feels. You're kind of hunting and pecking and looking around for the right bit of knowledge, but how we have it in there, but how do we surface it in such a way that's the most meaningful? Lastly, we know that if we're able to better leverage AI, we're able to track what our technicians are doing as they're helping customers. How could we feed that back into engineering? So those were the hard things that we're looking for and continue to work towards with implementing the solution that we have with Neuron7 and the pathways.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing, right? Having a deliberate, kind of path forward, where you're really kind of looking at the opportunities inside your organization, and being purposeful and having a plan, I think is, kind of what I take away from that. So you teased it a little bit when you talked about self-service, right? There's this whole concept now in service of shift left. It was an ITSM discipline, an internal IT discipline historically, but it's been, I would say a trend of late relative to how service organizations are trying to kind of shift cost across the organization, how they're trying to overcome some of these things, relative to retirements and other things, and people really looking at, hey, I just, have a self-service portal. I'll put a chatbot on it and I can shift left and my customers will be able to self-serve and everybody will be happy. We know that's not really, kind of the case in the real world. But, you have a kind of a pretty deliberate, I would say plan relative to self-service at Daktronics. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think all of us have been in situations, right? The last thing we want to do is pick up the phone to resolve something. We're using different applications to do our shopping, our banking, right? We want to be able to resolve within that application. And for us at Daktronics, most of the times the customers would need to call in order to resolve their issues. But is that really desired? Really, our customers want their issue resolved. And how we get them to that point is really designed by either a phone, or could we think of doing things in a different way? So we're going to learn more about the pathways in this conversation, but that was really the start of saying, how can I instruct a customer to walk through a situation in such a way that they can resolve their issue on their own? And so for us, the shift to the left, yes, it's about self-service, but ultimately we want our customers satisfied. And we want them to be able to have efficient resolution to issues. And so the shift to the left really entails, how do we stop? How do we enable our customers to resolve issues independently versus calling in for technical support versus then having to send somebody out in the field? Because me as a customer, when I have an issue, I don't want to wait 24 hours for someone to come to my home and resolve something. I want it resolved quickly. And if we have the knowledge, we have the expertise, we're leveraging AI in such a way that we can equip our customers with that knowledge, they're going to get greater levels of satisfaction because their issues are resolved sooner and more efficiently. And that's really our goal with this shift to the left, is higher customer satisfaction. And in turn, that enables us to be able to leverage our teams differently as we move into the future and reduce costs.
That's so critical. I think that a lot of people are thinking of, AI, automation, right? Replacing, kind of human jobs, right? Or you're thinking of it through the lens of just operational efficiency, right? But I think continuing to have the customer at the center of that journey relative to what you're trying to do is that North Star that you need to keep in mind, right? And if AI is going to erode, or in any way, impact the customer experience, it's something that you just need to dabble in lightly. Um, I'm gonna kind of skip forward. I want to save the conversation about product and engineering for when we do the demo here in a bit. Uh, but building a business case is sometimes easier said than done, right? In a lot of instances, we talk to a lot of service leaders. We haven't budgeted for that 2025, right? Or we don't even know really where to start. I had a great conversation with a service leader a few weeks ago that said they started with a lot of soft costs, things like operational efficiency, enhancing knowledge capture, and things of that nature. But where they really, kind of ended up with hard costs around things like improving first time fix rate, minimizing truck rolls, decreasing call deflection, and kind of those real hard metrics that you can measure through dollars and cents. So what advice do you have for people as they think about building that business case for AI? As they have to go into the organization and talk to finance partners and work with IT and ultimately get everybody on the same ship relative to driving these AI investments forward.
That's a good point. First of all, it would be your individual organization, your company's aptitude for understanding AI and what AI is in the business. When we started with this, over a year or so ago, it was new to the company to even think about what would AI look like in these cases. We'd used AI in certain applications, but not a lot. So when services brought this forward, there was an education that needed to happen across the organization. And I'm very grateful that we were able to partner with Neuron7 because they were able to help to articulate just the educational portions of it. Is our data going to be secure? Are you going to be sharing it with someone else? Right? Those were some of the initial fears as we went through that. So then once we were able to work through educating and gaining agreement across the organization, then we were able to start to articulate what would we want to do first and what does that look like as we work together. I think we all see AI and maybe it's projected this way, but it's a silver bullet. It's going to solve everything for you. Well, you have to start somewhere. When you start to imagine it and think it's going to help you across thousands of different things, what is that one or two things that you really would need the most help with? And start with one step at a time. In our particular case, we had a specific product that we had high volume of calls in, and we recognized that if we were able to solve through AI for that specific product, which has a high volume of calls, look at the return that we could get from that. So then being realistic in where you want to start and where you want to get to, but start with something and understand what impact that will have on the teams, the customers, and the organization. And through that, then we were able to gain a greater consensus amongst my peers in the senior leadership role to say, yes, let's try and let's experiment with this. Let's walk into this AI world that we're in, and let's partner with a company that truly wants to understand us and our business. Very, very important. We met with a lot of different companies out there, and a lot of them prescribed the way that they thought we should run our business. While we do want best practices across the industry, you want to partner with someone who will truly understand what are you trying to achieve and how can they best help you to achieve that. And that's really what Neuron7 did for us. Is we started off on this path of starting to understand what capabilities Neuron7 had, and we described our problem statement. Large, complex systems, and not just one system, many systems across many different areas. And through working together, we were able to then develop the appropriate approach to using AI in services. Very, very critical. And that was a couple of the things that helped us along the way.
That's so great. I was just talking to another service leader a few weeks ago, and they said, you just got to take a bite of the apple, right? But I think what I'm learning from you is you have to determine which apple to take a bite from as well, right? That could be kind of how we could build that analogy. So you're on this journey, right? You go and you get the funding, and you get, organizationally, you've defined your requirements. You pick a partner, in your case, Neuron7, and then you have to implement, right? And you have to get everybody, the service technicians, the contact center agents across your service delivery mechanism. You got to get them excited about it, right? So what advice do you have for people? What are you thinking about relative to kind of change management, continuous improvement? Is it a carrot approach? Is it a stick approach? Is it a little bit of both? Like, how do you get the frontline people kind of bought into this whole kind of AI wave as something that they feel is going to be a net positive to their, to their job performance, and not something that's going to be, a competition, if you will?
No, I appreciate that. First of all, what we've done, what was fortunate for us, we survey employees on an annual basis, and specifically within our services organization, some trends that we were hearing was there's information out there, but it's really hard for me to find. So what is it that's making my job more difficult to do? It was getting to that information that they need in order to be able to support their customers. So we already knew that getting to the details and the information was a pain point for our services team members. We also recognized that we had a lot of new employees that were coming in and they'd taken the training and they felt like, whoa, this is overwhelming. There is so much for us to be able to work through. I don't know how I'm going to do it all. So we were fortunate enough to be able to have those data points that led us, first of all, as an organization, right? We need to do something to help these employees, but be able to articulate that in the story that we told the employees as well. They know that we want to help them to be as successful as possible. We want to make their jobs easier. We want to help them to be able to serve customers more effectively. So as part of change management, first you have to understand what are the pain points your employees are feeling? What makes it difficult for them to do their jobs? And then what things can we bring in as service leaders to enable them to be more successful? And for us, it was really this AI, being able to surface the knowledge at the right times, for the right applications, and for the right situations. In addition to that, make it easy for them to be able to guide a customer through resolving an issue. And so then you're not really fighting against it taking my job. You're really enabling our employees to be more successful and have much more positive conversation with customers when they call in because they're better equipped to be able to help the customers with confidence.
I love that concept of starting with the employee survey, right? Really
Mhm.
finding the places where people feel that they're blocked the most, right?
Mhm.
And kind of starting with a very employee-centric kind of approach to it versus a very kind of top-down centric. You saw that stat that I shared earlier where it's like half of employees kind of feel like the AI is not helping them do their job. That indicates organizationally that we're not working with employees and thinking about how to make employees' lives better before we're doing this. And it's kind of the cart before the horse relative to AI. So before we bring Tom on and we kind of jump into a demo, I just kind of one kind of quick question to end us up on this section. Just you've been on this journey, right? Obviously this journey for you is not over, right? It's kind of really in some instances kind of just beginning. But if you think about kind of where you are now versus where you started, like what practical tip or advice do you have for anybody that's maybe a little bit earlier than you that you wish you knew before you got started?
No, I think that's helpful. I would say data, 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 right? And I think each one of us could probably say that's a challenge across our organizations as we have scaled, as we've implemented some of these new and CRM systems, but the data, connected data throughout the systems that enable us to be able to link knowledge directly to the parts and to the equipment that the customer is calling in about. However, I can also say don't let that prevent you. Don't let perfect get in the way of better. So we didn't have perfect data. We're still continuing to work on getting perfect data and better data. But I can tell you that I still, looking back, would have moved forward with these steps with AI because it's still enabling us to be successful. We're approaching it in a different way, and we recognize that on our long-term roadmap, it will even become better. But don't let that stop you from stepping into something with AI.
What great advice. Thank you for that.
Sarah, I had another question for you, right? So the part of the capabilities here, and as you know, we play throughout the entire continuum within service. Uh, Part of the capabilities is being able to report on usage, right? So R&D and engineering teams can now look at every time these issues arise, how often did engineers go down the right-hand path versus the left-hand path? How often were certain components failing that we had to replace, right? So wanted to ask you how you plan to use this from a future product direction and really closing the loop with your cross-functional teams internally in Daktronics.
Mhm. Yeah, we go back to that beginning conversation that we started with. What enabled us to be successful or to seek the approval to move forward with this? A couple things, right? We want to have high customers who are happy and satisfied. We want to have employees who are happy and satisfied. We want to reduce the effort it takes us to solve issues. Those are all really good things. But what we're finding is we get really good data back from our products that come back in for repair. And we're able to articulate to engineering what was the failure mechanism, how did it fail, what was done to resolve it, because we have our own repair center for our products. But what kind of ambiguous to our engineering group is like, what are your technicians who are talking to customers on the phone doing to solve issues when it doesn't result in a part, right? We don't want to always have to roll a truck or replace a part. There's things that we can solve remotely through working with customers that we can do without having to replace something in the field. But what we're doing there is ambiguous to them. We were never able to really capture it in the notes or describe it in such a way that they would know what was happening. So with these pathways now, we're able to now send this information back to engineering in such a way it says, the technician on the phone who was speaking to this customer did this step, this step, this step, this step. And at this point, they did this to resolve it. Now, could just imagine for a moment, if you do 5 steps and the third and the 6th step resolved it, and engineering sees that we're repeating this 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 times a year, they're looking at, they say, well, actually, we could do this and this to prevent the first 2 actions from even happening. They're able to take complexity out of our systems. They're able to find ways that maybe it would even prevent the issues from happening. So feedback to engineering was critical and most important for us as part of this journey, which will now enable us to unlock even higher levels of efficiency within not only how we support, but in our products itself.
That's great. Great to hear that, right? There's a lot of gold that we can report on from the usage of the flowcharts and all the great unstructured data. Awesome. So that concludes our demo. And we can dive deeper on a follow-up session. Thank you for the interaction there. Brian,
Thank you, Tom, and appreciate it again, Sarah. I think, putting a product demo into real world context, I think is important for the audience to understand kind of how you're going to use it. We had one question as we wrap up. We're almost at time here, but we did have a question from the audience about kind of like the best place to start relative to, more helpful for higher skilled technicians, such as tier 2 or 3 skill level, or more for the lower skilled, newer or tier 1 technicians, just kind of relative to AI initiatives in general. Like, is it easier to start with the more junior people because they don't have the knowledge, and or do you have to start with the more seasoned technicians to get that buy-in because they have so much cultural kind of cachet across the organization? So where should Noah think is starting relative to the kind of tiers of the support staff?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because it was something that we probably, if I would have gone back and recognized sooner in our process, is we were started to work on our pathways and started to build out some of this AI stuff. And we needed to have more time with our subject matter experts, those people who are more seasoned, because they're helping to build this out, helping to curate it out, helping to check to make sure what we're putting out there is relative and relatable to our technicians. So we relied heavily on it. We were thinking at first, maybe look through the pathways, spend a couple hours a week. It became more work for them than what we had first anticipated, but the results were so much better. So I would say leveraging your seasoned technicians in order to be able to build the pathways. And then the real benefit is, for us at least, we started with our least complex products, because we knew that products that were the less complexity would be easier to help create a pathway and troubleshoot. So then we had a lot, and we bring our new employees in, starting with the less complex projects. So it kind of worked that way for us naturally, but it will also work that way for our customers. As our customers with the less complex products, they're going to want an easy way to solve problems. And so that was kind of tailored in there. So I would say for whomever is thinking about doing this is, yes, it was more of a benefit for some of our newer employees who will needed to feel confident when working with customers. They had a more standard way to flow through things. And then we have our seasoned technicians who we're still needing them to use the pathways to validate, because we want each one of those data points to come through. So then they can help to curate it, change it as things are adjusting and changing. But it was, first of all, a higher benefit for some of our newer employees just by the nature of our work.
That's great. So I think it's, in a lot of instances, it's getting the senior people to kind of contribute to the process, right? So you're able to grab some of that, collective intelligence and tacit knowledge, and then being able to very quickly pass that on to the newer people who are going to get maybe a higher degree of benefit. But you need to have that kind of, that balanced approach. So thank you for that. And thank you for the question in the chat. We're at time. I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking some time out of your day today to learn a little bit about Sarah's journey with AI. Thank you, Sarah. You've been a trailblazer. You've been with us for a very long time, kind of helping us define this product and kind of build it. So kind of as an early adopter, your feedback has been critical in developing this product that's going to have amazing fit in the market. Thank you to Tom for walking through the demo. And with that, we will call it a wrap. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.